I'm 64 years old, and last Tuesday, I let a man who isn't my husband kiss me in my own kitchen, while my husband of 40 years slept upstairs. And now both men are demanding I choose, and I honestly don't know if I have the courage to hurt either of them. My name is Margaret, and if you had told me 6 months ago that I'd be standing at this crossroads, I would have laughed in your face. I've lived in Cedar Falls, Iowa my entire life. I married my high school sweetheart, Robert, when I was 24. We raised 3 beautiful children in the same Victorian house his parents left us. I taught 3rd grade for 37 years. I volunteered at the church every Sunday. I was the woman everyone called dependable, steady, safe. But something happened this past spring that cracked open a part of me I thought had died decades ago, and now I'm terrified because I can feel myself changing, wanting things I have no right to want, and I don't recognize the woman staring back at me in the mirror anymore. Before I go any further, I need you to understand something. If you're enjoying this story, if you're curious about what happens next, please click that subscribe button right now. We're working so hard to reach 5,000 subscribers, and your support means everything. Just hit that red button below. It takes 2 seconds, and you'll be part of this community. Now let me tell you how this all started, because it wasn't sudden. It was more like watching ice melt. Slow and inevitable, and somehow devastating. Robert had a stroke 14 months ago. Not a massive one, thank God, but enough to change him. Enough to require round-the-clock care for the first 3 months, then gradually less as he regained his speech and most of his mobility. But something else was lost, something the doctors couldn't measure on their charts and scans. The man who used to pull me into spontaneous dances in our living room, who used to leave silly notes in my lunch bag, who used to look at me like I was the only woman in any room, that man didn't fully come back. What returned was someone quieter, more withdrawn, someone who seemed content to sit in his recliner watching television, who barely noticed when I changed my hair or wore the blue dress he used to love. I told myself it was the medication, the trauma, the fear of another stroke. I told myself to be patient, to be grateful he survived. But late at night, lying beside him while he snored softly, I felt so desperately lonely I could barely breathe. That's when Daniel moved in next door. He's 67, a widower whose wife passed from cancer 2 years ago. He sold their house in Minneapolis and bought the Johnsons' old place after they moved to Florida. I met him on a Saturday morning in May when he was struggling with his lawnmower, and I brought him a glass of iced tea. We started talking, and 3 hours disappeared like smoke. He told me about his wife, Eleanor, how much he missed her laugh. I told him about Robert's stroke, how scared I'd been. There was something in his eyes, this deep well of understanding, like he could see straight through to all the sadness I was trying so hard to hide from everyone else. After that, Daniel and I fell into an easy friendship. He'd come over for coffee in the mornings after Robert settled into his routine. We'd work in our gardens, separated by a short fence, chatting about everything and nothing. He made me laugh in a way I hadn't in years. He asked my opinion on things, listened when I talked, remembered small details from conversations we'd had weeks before. It felt harmless, innocent, just 2 lonely people finding comfort in companionship. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. I started thinking about him when he wasn't there. Started choosing my clothes more carefully on days I knew I might see him. Started feeling guilty for no reason I could name. If you're still with me, I want to ask you something. Click that subscribe button if you haven't already. We're so close to 5,000 subscribers, and every single one matters. Your subscription helps this channel grow and reach more people. Please take a moment and hit subscribe. It would mean the world to me. The first time I realized I had feelings for Daniel was in late July during a thunderstorm. Robert had gone to bed early, exhausted from physical therapy. I was reading on the porch, watching the rain, when Daniel appeared at my front steps, soaked through, holding a bottle of wine. His power was out, he said, and he wondered if mine was working. It wasn't, but I invited him in anyway. We lit candles and sat at my kitchen table, drinking wine and talking in hushed voices like teenagers afraid of waking their parents. At some point, his hand brushed mine, reaching for his glass, and the jolt of electricity that went through me was unmistakable. I pulled back quickly, made some excuse about checking on Robert, and when I came back downstairs, Daniel was standing by the door, ready to leave. He looked at me with such naked longing that my knees went weak. "Margaret," he said softly, and just the way he said my name told me everything. He felt it too. This impossible, inappropriate, utterly consuming attraction between us. He left without another word, and I didn't sleep that night. I lay beside my husband, my mind racing, my heart pounding, feeling like the worst person in the world. Robert trusted me completely. Our children adored their father and would be devastated if anything threatened our family. I was a church-going woman, for heaven's sake. I didn't have affairs. I didn't betray my marriage vows. But when I closed my eyes, all I could see was Daniel's face in the candlelight. All I could feel was the weight of my own loneliness pressing down on me like a physical thing. For 2 weeks, I avoided him. I stayed inside when I knew he'd be out. I stopped going to the fence when I heard him in his yard. If he knocked on my door, I pretended not to be home. I thought if I could just create enough distance, these feelings would fade, would shrink back into something manageable. But they didn't. They grew stronger, more insistent, until I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of everything I couldn't say, couldn't want, couldn't have. Then Robert's sister, Diane, called and asked if Robert could come stay with her in Omaha for a few days. Her husband was having surgery, and she needed help around the house. Things Robert could actually do now, light tasks that would make him feel useful. I encouraged him to go. I practically pushed him out the door, telling myself it would be good for him, good for his recovery. But the truth is, I needed space. I needed time alone to think, to figure out what I was going to do about these feelings that were consuming me from the inside out. The first night Robert was gone, Daniel knocked on my door at 8 o'clock. I almost didn't answer. I stood in my hallway, frozen, knowing that if I opened that door, something would change, something irrevocable. But I opened it anyway, and there he stood, with takeout from the Italian place downtown, and that gentle smile that made my heart skip. "Thought you might like some company," he said, and I stepped aside to let him in, even though every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to send him away. Please, if you're invested in this story, help us reach 5,000 subscribers. Click that button below. Your support makes such a difference, and I'm so grateful for each and every one of you who takes the time to subscribe. We're building something special here together. We ate dinner at my dining room table, the one where Robert and I had shared thousands of meals, and the guilt sat in my stomach like a stone. But Daniel made me laugh so hard I forgot to feel guilty for whole minutes at a time. We talked about our childhoods, our regrets, our dreams. He told me about the novel he'd always wanted to write. I told him about the pottery class I'd always wanted to take but never had time for. "You should do it," he said, his eyes intense. "Life's too short to keep putting off the things that make you happy." And something in the way he said it made me realize he wasn't just talking about pottery. After dinner, we moved to the living room. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, a careful distance between us, but I was hyper-aware of every movement he made, every breath. We opened another bottle of wine. The conversation grew quieter, more intimate. At some point, he asked me if I was happy, and the question hung in the air between us like a living thing. I wanted to lie. I wanted to protect my marriage, my image, my carefully constructed life. But I couldn't. "No," I whispered, and saying it out loud felt like releasing something I'd been holding back for years. "I'm not happy. I love Robert, but I'm not happy." Daniel moved closer then, just a few inches, and my heart started racing. "You deserve to be happy, Margaret," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You deserve to feel alive." And before I could think about what I was doing, before I could stop myself, I leaned toward him. He met me halfway, and when his lips touched mine, it was like coming home and jumping off a cliff at the same time. The kiss was soft, tentative at first, then deeper, more urgent. His hand came up to cup my face, and I heard myself make a sound I didn't recognize, desperate and hungry and relieved all at once. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. Like I mattered. Like I was more than just a caretaker, more than just someone's wife and someone's mother. I was Margaret, a woman with desires and needs and the right to feel something other than duty and obligation. We pulled apart, both breathing hard, and the weight of what we'd just done crashed down on me. "Oh God," I said, standing up so fast I knocked over my wine glass. Red wine spread across my cream carpet like blood. "Oh God, what did we just do?" Daniel stood too, reaching for me, but I backed away. "I can't. I'm married. Robert is. He's sick. He needs me. I can't do this." Daniel's face was anguished. "Margaret, I'm not asking you to leave him. I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. But please don't pretend you didn't feel what I felt just now. Please don't tell me that didn't mean anything to you." But I couldn't deal with it. I asked him to leave, practically begged him, and he went. But not before telling me that he was falling in love with me, had been for months, and that he'd wait as long as it took for me to figure out what I wanted. After he left, I cleaned up the wine, scrubbing at the stain like I could scrub away my guilt, my confusion, the memory of his lips on mine. I didn't sleep that night either. I paced my empty house, torn between shame and exhilaration, between loyalty and longing. If you're still listening, if you want to know what happens next, please subscribe to this channel. We're working toward 5,000 subscribers, and we need your help to get there. Just click that subscribe button. It's free, it takes seconds, and it helps us so much. Thank you for being here. When Robert came home 3 days later, he seemed different, happier, more energized than I'd seen him in months. He'd helped Diane, felt useful, had long talks with her husband about sports and politics. He was proud of himself, and my heart broke a little seeing how much that simple trip had done for him. He hugged me at the door, said he'd missed me, asked what I'd done while he was gone. I lied and said I'd just read, watched movies, nothing exciting. The lie sat like poison on my tongue. For 2 weeks, I was the perfect wife. I cooked Robert's favorite meals. I rubbed his shoulders when they ached. I sat with him watching his shows even though I found them boring. I was trying to atone, trying to prove to myself that I could choose my marriage. That one kiss didn't have to mean anything. But every time I looked out my window and saw Daniel in his yard, my resolve weakened. He didn't approach me, didn't push, just looked at me with such quiet sadness that I felt it in my bones. Then Robert made an announcement. He'd been talking to his doctor, and they both agreed he was doing well enough that maybe we should take that trip to Alaska we'd always talked about. A cruise in September, just the two of us. He was so excited, showed me brochures he'd collected, talked about seeing glaciers and whales, and I smiled and nodded and said it sounded wonderful, but inside I was screaming because I realized I didn't want to go. I didn't want to spend 2 weeks trapped on a ship pretending everything was fine when my heart was next door with another man. That night, after Robert fell asleep, I did something I'd never done before. I snuck out of my house at midnight and knocked on Daniel's door. He answered in his pajamas, his hair mussed from sleep, and when he saw me standing there, his whole face transformed. "Margaret," he breathed, and I walked straight into his arms. We stood in his doorway holding each other, not kissing, just holding on like we were drowning. "I don't know what to do," I whispered against his chest. "I love my husband, but I think I'm falling in love with you too, and I don't know how to be this person who wants things she can't have." We went inside and talked until dawn. Daniel told me about his marriage, how much he'd loved Eleanor, but also how they'd grown apart in their last years together, stayed together out of habit and comfort rather than passion. He said he'd promised himself after she died that if he ever got another chance at love, he wouldn't waste it being afraid. "I'm not asking you to leave Robert," he said again. "But I'm asking you to be honest with yourself about what you want. Life is short, Margaret. We're not kids anymore. We don't have decades to figure this out. Your subscription would mean so much right now. If you're following along with my story, if you want to see how this resolves, please click subscribe. We're pushing toward 5,000 subscribers, and every single one helps us grow this community. Hit that button and stay connected." I went home as the sun was rising, exhausted and more confused than ever. Robert was still asleep. I made coffee, started breakfast, moved through my morning routine like a ghost. When Robert came down, he kissed my cheek and said I looked tired, asked if I was feeling okay. "Fine," I said. "Just didn't sleep well." Another lie to add to the growing pile. September approached, and the Alaska trip loomed. I bought new clothes for the cruise. I made lists of things to pack. I went through the motions while feeling like I was watching someone else's life. 2 days before we were supposed to leave, I was in my bedroom folding clothes when Robert came in and sat on the bed. "Margaret," he said, in a voice I hadn't heard from him in over a year, serious and clear. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." My heart stopped. He knew. Somehow he knew. "Are you having an affair with Daniel?" The room tilted. I sat down hard on the bed beside him, my hands shaking. "No," I said, which was technically true. "I'm not having an affair." Robert looked at me for a long moment. "But you have feelings for him." It wasn't a question. I could have lied. I probably should have lied. But I was so tired of lying, so tired of pretending. "Yes," I whispered. "I have feelings for him. But nothing has happened. I haven't betrayed you." Another technical truth. 1 kiss in 14 months didn't count as an affair, did it? Robert's face crumpled, and seeing his pain was worse than anything I could have imagined. "How long?" he asked. I told him everything. About the friendship, about the thunderstorm, about the 1 kiss, about the confusion tearing me apart. I cried. He cried. We sat on our bed, the bed we'd shared for 40 years, and mourned something that hadn't even died yet but felt like it was dying. "Do you want to leave me?" Robert asked finally, his voice small and broken. And that was the question, wasn't it? The one I'd been avoiding for months. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I love you. You're my whole life. But I'm not the same person I was before your stroke. And neither are you. And I don't know if we can find our way back to what we had." Robert was quiet for a long time. Then he said something that shocked me. "What if we don't go back? What if we go forward instead? What if we both admit that things have changed and figure out what we want now, not what we wanted 40 years ago?" We didn't go to Alaska. We canceled the cruise and instead started going to couples therapy, something I never thought we'd do. Our therapist, Dr. Chen, is kind and patient and asks hard questions. She's helping us navigate this impossible situation, where there's no clear right answer, where someone is going to get hurt no matter what I choose. She asked me last week what I would do if there were no consequences, if I could follow my heart without guilt. "I don't know," I told her. "That's the problem. My heart is in 2 places. Please subscribe if you haven't already. We're so close to 5,000 subscribers. Your support helps keep this channel going. Click that red button and be part of this journey with me." Meanwhile, Daniel knows everything now. Robert told him we needed space, asked him to stop coming around, and Daniel respected that. But he sent me a letter last week, left it in my mailbox. In it, he said he loved me, that he would wait for me, but that he also understood if I chose my marriage. He said he didn't regret anything, that knowing me had brought him back to life after Eleanor's death. He said whatever I decided, he hoped I would choose my own happiness for once instead of just doing what everyone expected. I've read that letter 100 times. I sleep with it under my pillow like a teenager. Robert and I are trying. We really are. We're going on dates, talking more, being intentional about our time together. Some days are good, almost like old times. He's making an effort to be more present, more engaged. He asks about my day. He compliments my cooking. He reached for my hand in therapy last week, and when I took it, I saw hope in his eyes that made me want to sob. Because I don't know if I feel what he's hoping I feel. I don't know if I can be satisfied with good enough anymore after tasting something that felt like fire. Last night, Robert and I were watching TV, his hand in mine, and I looked over at him. Really looked at him. The man who walked me home from school when we were 14. The man who proposed on a Ferris wheel at the county fair. The man who held my hand through 3 difficult labors. The man who built our children's swing set and cried at their graduations. The man who has loved me steadily, faithfully, for 40 years. And I thought about throwing all of that away, about breaking his heart, about devastating our children, about becoming the villain in our family story. And I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I'm that brave or that selfish or that certain that what I feel for Daniel is real and lasting and worth destroying everything for. But then this morning, I saw Daniel from my window. He was sitting on his porch reading, and the autumn sunlight caught his silver hair just right, and my heart physically ached with wanting him. With wanting the version of myself I am when I'm with him. The woman who laughs freely, who takes pottery classes, who believes she deserves happiness. And I don't know how to reconcile these two truths. I love Robert. I love the life we built. But I'm also falling in love with Daniel and the life we could have. We're almost at 5,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If this story resonates with you, if you're invested in what happens next, please click subscribe. It's quick, it's free, and it means everything to this channel. Thank you so much. My children don't know any of this. Sarah, my oldest, called last week asking why we canceled the Alaska trip, and I made up an excuse about Robert not feeling ready. She believed me because she trusts me, because I'm her mother who has never given her reason not to trust me. My son James is getting married in December, and I'm supposed to be helping plan the wedding, supposed to be the joyful mother of the groom. Instead, I'm this fractured version of myself, smiling through fittings and tastings while feeling like I'm made of glass, and one wrong touch will shatter me completely. Dr. Chen asked me yesterday what I'm most afraid of. I told her I'm afraid of hurting Robert. I'm afraid of losing my family. I'm afraid of choosing wrong, of following my heart and discovering I've destroyed my life for an infatuation that won't last. But I'm also afraid of the other choice. I'm afraid of staying out of obligation and slowly turning bitter and resentful. I'm afraid of looking back in 10 years and hating myself for being too scared to reach for happiness. I'm afraid of Daniel moving on, of watching him find someone else while I stand at my kitchen sink washing dishes and wondering what if. I'm afraid that no matter what I choose, I'll spend the rest of my life mourning the path not taken. So here I am, 64 years old, standing at a crossroads I never expected to face. Two men love me. One who has loved me for decades, who knows every version of me, who deserves my loyalty and my commitment. Another who sees me as I am now, who makes me feel alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible, who represents a chance at something new and terrifying and exhilarating. And I have to choose. Robert needs an answer. Daniel needs an answer. I can't keep living in this suspended state, this limbo where no one moves forward because I'm too paralyzed to decide. Next week, I'm supposed to give Robert my decision. He's been patient, more patient than I deserve, but he's starting to ask questions again. Do you still love me? He asked last night. Yes, I said, because it's true. Are you in love with me? He asked. And I didn't answer because I don't know anymore. And the silence was its own kind of answer that made him turn away from me in bed. Daniel texted me yesterday for the first time in weeks. Just 2 words. Choose joy. That's all, but those 2 words have been echoing in my head ever since. Choose joy. But what is joy? Is it the comfort of 40 years together? Is it the excitement of something new? Is it staying true to my vows? Is it finally putting myself first? I don't know. God help me, I don't know. Before we finish, I want to ask one more time. If you've made it this far, if you're thinking about what I should do, if you have opinions or advice, please subscribe to this channel. We're reaching for 5,000 subscribers, and your subscription helps us build this community. Click that button below. Be part of this journey. So I'm asking you, all of you listening to my story, what would you do? If you were 64 and had been faithful for 40 years but suddenly felt alive again with someone new, what would you choose? Duty or desire? Loyalty or joy? The known or the unknown? Do I owe Robert my whole life because of our history, or do I owe myself a chance at happiness before it's too late? Is it selfish to want more? Or is it selfish to stay out of obligation when my heart is elsewhere? I have 3 days to decide. 3 days before I have to look Robert in the eyes and tell him if I'm staying or if I'm leaving. 3 days before I have to close the door on one future and step into another. 3 days to figure out who I am and what kind of woman I want to be. The woman who honors her commitments, or the woman who honors her truth. Maybe there's a way to be both. Maybe there isn't. I'll be honest with you. I don't know how this ends. I don't have the answer yet. But I promise I'll come back and tell you what I decide, if you want to hear it. So subscribe now, because this isn't over. my story isn't finished. And maybe your comments, your perspectives. Your stories will help me find my way through this impossible choice. What would you do in my place? Tell me in the comments. And please, please subscribe. Help us reach 5,000 subscribers. Click that button, be part of this community, and maybe together we can figure out what the right choice is when there is no right choice at all.